Hi everyone, LiberAnarchy here, and I have a little vlog, a bit of a ramble, a bit of a rant. More of a ramble. I'm not really sure where exactly to begin, so I guess I'll just dive in and say, those of you who have known me for a while know that I am one of the few people who have actually deconverted from, yes, I grew up Christian, but I deconverted ultimately from a pagan religion. And I was serious about it too. I wasn't like, you know, just some person who was like, well, this feels good or this looks cool or I want to scare my parents or, I want to be somehow, I want to be like all metal and stuff. And, I was serious. I was reading some books and, I was on some forums and, I was one of the people who actually would politely correct people on things and cite a source or two and link people to websites and stuff. And I was still in a lot of ways pretty new, but I was still pretty serious about it. I was actually educating myself, and I would like to think of myself as a person who wasn't just being superficial or superstitious or just plain stupid. Um, because you have a lot of people who maybe they're looking for an excuse to be angry or looking for an excuse to be rebellious or whatever, and so they decide that they're going, or they don't want to be like those fluffies or whatever. Whatever. There's a lot of weird people out there, and so they go off and say, "Oh well, I'm gonna go worship a kick-ass pantheon," right? Yeah, and I'd like to think of myself as not having been one of those people. Um, but yeah, so and I was working under a lot of confirmation bias, and it's something that every human being is susceptible to. It's not something you have to be a fool to work under. Okay. Basically, confirmation bias is taking note of evidence that supports your viewpoints while ignoring evidence that does not. A non religious example would be, let's say somebody um, has a particular political viewpoint, and let's say their political viewpoint is along the lines of corporations are greedy and must be reined in and controlled by the government in order to protect the citizens. Now, people who know me know that I think government enables corporations, but nevertheless. Now, such a person may look at the economic crisis, and I know. I'm using these terms that were given to me by the media, right? May look at the recession, may look at the economy going under, and I kind of at this point I've come to understand that the way things are going now, it's kind of inevitable. But I shouldn't have given a political example because I'm off on another topic. But okay, let's say somebody thinks corporations are bad and government has to save us from corporations. They'll look at the economic recession and they'll just say, "Yeah, see, this is what corporations do. This is what excessive greed does. This is what happens when you have a consumerist culture that buys more than it can afford, and and so on and so forth." And see, this is what happens when corporations go unregulated. They're going to see economic problems as evidence to support their viewpoint. And if somebody says, well, actually, under the Clinton administration, the government was encouraged to give loans to minorities to the point where it didn't matter if they should have given certain individuals loans. What mattered is that they were a minority, and they wanted to give them loans and houses and stuff like that, even if they couldn't afford it. And so that, a person, hypothetical person who I described may just ignore that and say, oh well, they'll just ignore it and find evidence that supports their viewpoints and pay more attention to that. And all human beings do this, okay? This isn't something that you have to be like, some kind of, you don't have to be one of the crazy YouTubers like Methylene Free to do this, okay? I mean, of course, YouTubers like that are going to be willfully ignorant and do it a lot, but excuse me. Yay. Coffee. Anyway. But, yeah, so I was working under a lot of confirmation bias. I would see things as being rather synchronistic, and I'd put things together and say, well, such and such happening in the physical world is somehow things coming together in a way that suggests that the gods are somehow real, and and throw it together with a bunch of dreams and whatnot and feelings and so on and so forth. And it's very easy to say, well, there must be gods and they must be trying to, sort of poke me and get me heading in the right direction, and in a way, sort of point the way back home. And if you are interested in a religion that isn't quite plainly not for everybody, and more based in, not based in, what's the word I'm looking for? That puts a very high emphasis on one's ancestors and honors one's ancestors, and pretty much plainly says it's not for everybody. In fact, most pagans will say, in whatever strain of paganism they hail from, they're going to say it's not for everybody, and if it's not for you, don't do it, and that's fine. And there's no animosity in that. It's just, different strokes for different folks, right? So then there's no longer a question of, well, why doesn't everybody experience it? Why is it just me? And only a few other of us on the internet and so on. And but after a couple years of, I wouldn't call it like heavy, intense belief, but after a few years of believing, I, to one degree or another, large or small, I kind of had to realize, where's the evidence? Where is the testable, reliable, repeatable evidence? And there is none. I'm sorry. It's just, there is none. And and yet I'm coming to a point where, but gosh, I feel like it's real. And I can feel like something is real all damn day. See, human emotions, brain chemistry, it's wild, People can trick themselves into thinking all kinds of things are real. And it can feel real all damn day, every goddamn day of the week. And it still does, but that doesn't mean that it isn't, or excuse me, that doesn't mean that it is real. And in some ways, I mean, I know I don't, I say this, I know that I'm not like I know there's nothing bad about feeling one way or another. I mean, we feel however it is in the world we feel. You know, um, you can feel angry about something, and whatever you do with that, that's up to you. You can take some deep breaths and calm down, or you can be motivated into making an educational video on YouTube or a rant on YouTube, or you can be motivated into telling a bunch of jokes and writing a satire or something. You can do any number of things with anger that aren't, somehow malignant to those around you or to yourself. And you don't have to hang on to anger if you don't want to. It's kind of like, well, anger's here, it has its purpose, do whatever you're going to do, and then let go of it, right? At least that's the way I think of it. But, so I know intellectually that feeling a certain way does not make me good, bad, stupid, whatever. It just, I feel like however in the world I feel. But I'm still kind of disappointed in myself because, I feel in a way like I'm being superstitious. Like I'm still mired in some kind of superstition in the same way that a lot of, in a way that a lot of moderate Christians are, where they can carry on an intelligent conversation and they aren't going to try and legislate based on their particular religious beliefs, but then maybe you bring up an issue like gay marriage, and I might try to frame it in terms of there's consenting adults who want to draw up a contract that isn't really going to affect you. What do you care? And then they'll frame it in, well, the gay agenda, not because they're hateful, but because they still have a certain level of respect for fundamentalists and con artists and everything, because they do what they do and say what they say behind the facade of religion. One that a moderate may still respect. But then again, of course, there's also the moderates that would be really, really angry about that sort of thing. I mean, I'm not trying to denigrate moderates or something, no. So, yeah, I'm feeling kind of like superstitious and stupid, even though I shouldn't necessarily. It's to the point where I'm thinking about buying a hammer pendant, Mjolnir, Thor's hammer, just because it feels right. But I can't, in all honesty, I can't talk apparently. I can't, in all honesty, believe, but if I'm going to be honest with myself, that doesn't mean that I'm not still, in a way, very compelled to believe. Which is really, it's a weird state to be in. It really is. So, I really sympathize with people who are, they haven't given up their religion, but it's like intellectually they know there's no evidence, but emotionally the religion is still there. And so I don't know why I would still feel like something is real that isn't real, that I've come to say, well, you know what, there's no evidence. I can respect people's beliefs and all that and leave people alone. I'm not going, and I can still be friends with people with different beliefs and all that, but I've, come to my own conclusions, and yet, I still feel all the feelings I used to feel, I guess you would have to have been religious to understand when somebody says that they feel the gods, or feel the presence of the gods, or feel like it's all real.